You wake up, and the silence isn't peace, it's absence. Not the absence of noise, but the absence of meaning. There's money in your account, food in your fridge, a roof over your head. Your notifications are lit, your calendar full. And yet, you feel nothing. Not pain, not joy, just the dull ache of existing. You scroll, you swipe, you hustle, you lift, you perform, and still it's there. The hollowness, like a room deep inside you that no one has ever entered, including you. And here's the sick part. You're not even surprised anymore. You've accepted it, normalized it. You wear it like a second skin. This is just life, right? Wrong. Carl Jung didn't call this life. He called it a spiritual emergency, the silent crisis of a man severed from his soul. He warned us that modern man is not suffering from too little comfort. He is suffering from too little meaning. That the most dangerous thing isn't suffering itself, but the inability to suffer meaningfully. You've become a role, a function, a placeholder in someone else's system. And deep down, you know it. You've been measured, evaluated, and shaped, not into a man, but into a product. Your masculinity reduced to performance metrics, money, muscles, manners. But what if the emptiness isn't the problem? What if it's the alarm? What if that feeling, that cold, gnawing hollowness, isn't a symptom to fix, but a message to decode? What if your soul is starving, not for comfort, not for stimulation, but for confrontation? And what if Jung was right, that the only way to escape the void is not to run from it, not to talk it away, not to self-care it into submission, but to walk straight into its mouth, willingly? You think you're failing at life, but what you're really failing at is playing a role that was never meant for you. You weren't built to be liked. You were built to be real. But realness has a cost, and you've been taught to fear that cost your entire life. The emptiness you feel is the tax of pretending. Pretending to be okay. Pretending to be motivated. Pretending to be whole. Carl Jung had a name for this: psychic inflation. The mask becomes so convincing, even you believe it. And then one day, the mask slips, and you realize there's nothing underneath it. Just shadows. Just echoes. Just silence. But here's the paradox. That silence? That void. It's not your enemy. It's your initiation. It's the beginning of individuation, the long, brutal path of becoming a man who no longer lives through the eyes of others. Not a copy, not a character, but a sovereign being. And the void? It's the door. Carl Jung warned us. The persona is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself and others think one is. You feel empty because you've built your life on the scaffolding of this persona and not on the core of your soul. You were never taught to become a man. You were taught to perform one, to be agreeable, predictable, useful, to be safe. You crafted a self from scraps, what others approved of, what women responded to, what society rewarded. Not truth, not fire, not shadow, just functionality. And it worked, didn't it? You got attention. You fit in. You avoided rejection. But what you gained in acceptance, you paid for in authenticity. Now you're stuck in a role, a polished mask that suffocates you. You stopped being a man. You became a role. And the deeper tragedy? You believe this was your actual face. This is the trap of persona. It doesn't just hide the truth from others, it hides it from you. You confuse the mask with the man. You confuse performance with purpose. And every compliment you receive for being reliable or put together or such a nice guy is another layer of armor around a man who's already drowning in silence. You smile, nod, work hard, say the right things, and then wonder why nobody really sees you. They can't. You don't let them, because you don't even know what's behind the mask anymore. And here's the brutal truth. The longer you wear the mask, the more you attract people who love the mask, not you. Women who are in love with your predictability. Friends who are addicted to your validation. A world that thrives on your obedience. And inside, you're screaming, but politely, quietly, in perfect grammar. Jung didn't want men to be good. He wanted them to be whole. He knew that the man obsessed with being good is often the one hiding the most resentment, the most rage, the most repressed desire. Why? Because goodness without consciousness is just performance. A well-trained dog is not a free man. The persona gives you applause, but it takes your power. You can't feel whole while wearing a mask designed to be seen, not lived in. You're not empty because you're broken. You're empty because you've outsourced your identity. Every time you adjust yourself to be liked. Every time you silence your gut to keep the peace. Every time you choose approval over truth. You feed the mask and starve the soul. And the soul, unlike the ego, is not polite. It doesn't care about your resume or your likes or your relationship status. It only cares about one thing. Are you living the truth? If not, it will drain you. That's the real cause of your emptiness. Not failure, not depression, not some chemical imbalance that can be medicated away. You are betraying yourself. And betrayal always leaves a wound. Carl Jung didn't want to fix you. He wanted to wake you up. Modern culture, on the other hand, wants to domesticate you, to file down your edges, to medicate your shadow, to shame your instincts until you become manageable. They call it healing. Jung called it spiritual possession. You were not raised. You were tamed. From the moment you showed signs of wildness, anger, defiance, obsession, raw emotion, they labeled it bad behavior. And so you learned to hide it. You buried the chaos under manners. You buried the desire under shame. You buried the fire under a smile. They called it maturity, but it was surrender, not transformation, suppression. The result? A man who's well-behaved, but hollow. Efficient, but not alive. Smart, but disconnected from his instincts. You're a trained animal in a psychological zoo. You speak the language of self-help. You journal. You meditate. You say things like holding space and setting boundaries. But you are still trapped. Why? Because your wounds were not witnessed, they were analyzed. Your rage was not understood, it was redirected. Your hunger was not honored, it was sedated. You don't need more advice. You need to descend. Jung taught that real transformation doesn't happen through improvement. It happens through integration. He wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And that's where most therapy, and most men, stop. You want light without shadow, growth without discomfort, truth without terror. But you can't amputate parts of yourself and call it healing. The parts of you that you call too much. The parts you hide from women, from friends, from yourself. That's where your soul lives. That's your power, rotting in exile. You don't feel empty because you lack love. You feel empty because you abandoned your inner wilderness. The wild man within you isn't gone. He's just silent. Because every time he tried to speak, you drugged him with productivity. You silenced him with politeness. You numbed him with pornography, with social media, with busy schedules, with compliance. And now, you don't know what you want. You don't know who you are. You don't even know what you're capable of. You are not a man anymore. You are a system, a mask, a script. And here's the deepest betrayal. You did this to yourself, to be loved. You wanted to be chosen so badly. You chose to disappear. But Jung knew something terrifying. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Because to truly accept yourself means inviting back in the darkness you were taught to fear. Your aggression, your lust, your wrath, your selfishness, your wildness. Not to be ruled by them, but to reclaim them, to integrate them, to wield them with awareness. Because power without awareness is destruction. But awareness without power? That's slavery. You've been taught awareness. Now it's time to remember power. You were told to be good, to be polite, to be agreeable, to be safe. And somewhere along the way, you started to believe that being safe was the same as being good. That the absence of conflict meant the presence of growth. That being liked meant being loved. It doesn't. It just means you're forgettable, pleasant, replaceable. Carl Jung warned us. The man who does not confront his shadow becomes a puppet of it. You've spent your life trying not to disturb others. But now you're the one who's disturbed. You've given your power away so many times that the idea of having it now feels aggressive. But hear this clearly. You are not supposed to be safe. You are supposed to be real. A man who has met his shadow does not need to yell. He doesn't need to threaten. His silence is the threat. Because it's the silence of a man who has faced himself and lived. That kind of presence unsettles people. Especially those who rely on your approval to feel safe. Your detachment will be called arrogance. Your boundaries will be called coldness. Your clarity will be called cruelty. But let them call it what they want. Most people don't want to know who you are. They want you to reflect who they wish to be. The moment you stop playing the part, they panic. You're not broken. You're just waking up. You're realizing that what you thought was connection was often control. What you thought was intimacy was enmeshment. What you called love was obligation. And now? Now you're angry. Now you feel betrayed. Now you feel dangerous. Good. That danger you feel is not a problem. It's a signal. A sign that your wild soul is remembering its teeth. That you are no longer content with being a well-trained emotional lapdog. Jung believed that this moment, this rupture, is sacred. It's the first spark of individuation, the death of the role, and the birth of the man. But don't confuse awakening with liberation. This is only the threshold. What comes next will cost you everything you built to feel safe. You will lose friends. You will disappoint family. You will terrify the women who once adored your submission. But what you gain is yourself. Your real self. Not the brand. Not the persona. Not the man you perform. The man you are. The one who doesn't flinch when he's misunderstood. The one who doesn't beg to be seen. The one who knows that silence is louder than performance. When you stop seeking approval, people think you're withdrawing. You're not. You're arriving. And the man who arrives in himself is no longer available for negotiation. You don't need more information. You need integration. You don't need better coping mechanisms. You need to remember who the hell you were before the world convinced you to cope. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Let that sink in. Every addiction, every anxious spiral, every false identity you wear, it's not just psychological. It's spiritual possession. You are not choosing to act like this. You're being driven by a fragmented psyche, hijacked by unlived stories and inherited shadows, and you wonder why you feel so empty. You've spent years trying to fix the surface, while something deeper starves. The soul doesn't want strategies that IT wants sovereignty. And here's the paradox. You will not find wholeness by adding more. You will find it by removing everything false. Masks, scripts, roles, gone. And what's left? Presence. The quiet, terrifying clarity of being exactly who you are. No filters, no edits, no apology. That presence is not soft, that it's not performative, that it's not mindfulness. It's war. Inner war. That a man in presence has stopped negotiating with his pain, that he's no longer interested in managing symptoms, that he wants the root. He wants the truth, even if it burns. And when you start living like this, fully awake, radically honest, something strange happens. People can't lie around you anymore. They can't posture. They can't hide in spiritual bypassing or intellectual nonsense. Your very being becomes a mirror, and most people can't stand their reflection. This is the moment you stop trying to be liked. Because presence isn't charming, that it's confronting. You are no longer a man seeking approval. You are a man casting shadows just by standing still. And the world? It fears men like this, because they can't be sold to. They can't be seduced. They can't be manipulated by validation, guilt, or shame, that they've already lost the version of themselves that used to need it. That's the man you're becoming. But let me be clear. This path doesn't make you invincible. The IT makes you responsible. You don't walk around preaching. You walk around witnessing. You watch. You listen. You wait. Because presence doesn't need to prove itself. It radiates. And in that presence, the right people will be drawn to you. Not because you chased them, but because you stopped running from yourself. This is power, not dominance over others, but dominion over your own soul. The will to power is not about conquering the world, that it's about confronting the war within. And when that war quiets, even for a moment, you'll feel it. The emptiness doesn't vanish, but it transforms. It becomes spaciousness, depth, stillness, the kind of stillness that can hold pain without collapsing, the kind of stillness that commands without speaking, that leads without performing, that loves without losing eye. It was never about becoming more. It was always about becoming real. But the world didn't want real. It wanted useful. It wanted agreeable. It wanted quiet compliance dressed in the costume of growth. So you learned to disappear in plain sight, to perform strength while hollowed out, to smile with dead eyes and call it peace. And when the applause didn't fill you, you blamed yourself for still feeling empty. But Carl Jung warned us. A man who looks outside dreams. A man who looks inside awakens. This is your awakening. And it will not feel good. It will not feel triumphant. It will feel like death. Because it is a death. The death of the actor. The mask. The boy who needed to be chosen to believe he had worth. You'll grieve him. And then you'll bury him. Because he was never going to be enough. Not for her. Not for them. Not even for you. You were never meant to be adored. You were meant to be whole. And wholeness requires integration, not admiration. You don't need another performance. You need silence, stillness, sovereignty. You've spent your life being measured. By women, by bosses, by peers, by parents. Measured and found either lacking or convenient. But you never stopped to measure yourself. Not by status, not by money, not by charm, but by presence, by inner weight, by the gravity of your soul when it no longer begs to be fed with praise. And here's the most brutal truth of all. You're not a victim. You're a volunteer. Every time you said yes when you meant no, you volunteered. Every time you performed for love, you volunteered. Every time you betrayed yourself to feel wanted, you volunteered. And now? Now you have to unvolunteer. Now you walk the path Jung called individuation. The long, painful road back to yourself. Not your ego. Not your mask. Not your potential. Yourself. The wild, wounded, sacred center of you that has never bowed to anyone. It's still in there. It always was. But it's buried under years of scripts you didn't write, roles you didn't audition for, and stories that were never yours. Burn them. Burn it all. Let people call you cold. Let them call you distant, arrogant, dangerous. They're not describing you. They're describing their fear of your freedom. Because when you no longer need them to see you, they can't use their gaze to control you. This is the man who cannot be seduced by fantasy. This is the man who no longer performs. This is the man who no longer waits to be chosen. This is the man who chooses himself. And from that place, you stop needing women to carry your soul. You stop needing coaches to tell you what you already know. You stop needing validation like oxygen. You stand alone, not as a punishment, but as a rebirth. And something strange begins to happen. You stop attracting noise. You stop attracting chaos. You stop attracting illusions dressed as intimacy. And you begin attracting what you've become. Depth, stillness, truth. You are no longer a role. You are no longer a mirror for someone else's fantasy. You are the mirror for reality itself. And men like that, they don't need to scream. They don't need to prove. They don't need to explain. They exist, and that is enough. So here's your final challenge. Don't just listen to this and scroll on. Sit in the silence. Feel the weight of your own absence. Then choose to return, not as a boy, not as a mask, but as the man who stopped waiting to be seen and started seeing himself. Carl Jung didn't leave you a path. He left you a fire. Step into it. Let it burn everything false. And when the ashes settle, don't ask who you've become. Just breathe. Because finally, you've arrived.